How many groups should you try to use to build your business? And this may sound counterintuitive to you, but this is a place where less truly is more. I'm going to recommend to you that you should use this in no more than 5 groups. And candidly, that's probably pushing it. Realistically, I think you can only do this in 2, maybe 3 groups.
Welcome to the Online Genius Podcast, where host and renegade thinking beer brewing lawyer turned online entrepreneur Bobby Klinck proves that building and protecting your online genius doesn't have to be rocket science. Bobby and his expert guests break down online marketing and the legal stuff so you can stop sweating the small stuff and get back to building your amazing business. Now, here's your host, Bobby Klinck.
Hey there, welcome to episode 66 of the Online Genius Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klinck, and I am really excited for today's show. I know I say that about every show, but this one is a bit different because this one we're going to be talking about my favorite way to build your authority and your business. Literally, this is the most important thing I've ever done in my business and in building my online presence, and I wanted to share it with you. Today, we're going to be talking about Facebook groups. But before we get there, this week's episode, as always, is brought to you by my Facebook group, the Online Genius Podcast community on Facebook. Now, that's where we can go deeper. We can have conversations. We can have Q&As. If you wanted to talk and kind of pick my brain about what we're talking about this week or another week, you can do that in the group, and you can join it absolutely free. You do that by heading over to youronlinegenius.com/community. Again, youronlinegenius.com/community. You can join the group and you'll be able to get access to me, ask me questions, talk about whether it's marketing or legal stuff, whatever it is, we can have that two-way conversation. And so now let's dive into today's show. And I did a bit of a head fake there because you probably thought that I was going to be talking about building your own group. And I love my group and my groups. I have multiple. But today's episode is not about how to use your own group. Today's episode is about leveraging other people's groups to build your business. And before you think I'm going to go tell you to go spam every group and start, posting a bunch of crazy links elsewhere, I hope you know better than now, know me well enough by now to know that's not what I'm going to teach you. I'm not going to teach you how to go and do it the wrong way. I'm going to teach you how to do this the right way, without being salesy, without being spammy. And there's no guest today because I've actually used this technique like gangbusters. Pretty much every day, I get someone joining my list, buying something from me cold, literally just going and buying something without even, ever communicating with me, or sending me a message to start a conversation about what they should buy or how they should enter my world or something like that because they found me in a Facebook group. And I'm going to walk you through how I got to that point. What was the strategy I used and how can you do the exact same thing for your business? And I'm kind of going to break it down into, 3 big areas. First, we're going to talk about how many groups should you be in. Second, we're going to talk about how to find the right group or groups. And third, then I'm going to talk about what do you do once you're in there. And I know you've maybe heard people talk about this before, but I'm going to tell you to do it differently than I think I've heard other people talk about it. Or at least I haven't heard people talk about it in depth the way that I'm going to explain it here. So I'm going to give you, in a sense, I think of it as my masterclass on how I've used Facebook and social media more generally to build my business. And Facebook is where I've done it. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in. Let's start with the first question. How many groups should you try to use to build your business? And this may sound counterintuitive to you, but this is a place where less truly is more. I'm going to recommend to you that you should use this in no more than 5 groups. And candidly, that's probably pushing it. Realistically, I think you can only do this in 2, maybe 3 groups. And the reason why is, look, there's power in focus. What I'm going to be teaching you here isn't a method that you can go and deploy in, say, 10 minutes, in 10 different groups and just be done, right? In an hour, you'll do it all in 10 groups and you'll be great, done. I don't have to worry anymore. In reality, what I'm going to teach you in this episode, the only way you could do it and actually have a business and do anything else in your business is to pick 2, maybe 3 groups and focus your time there. Now, it's fine to start with more to get a feel for which ones are actually a good fit for you and kind of whittle over time, but you're not going to be able to do it in multiple, in large numbers of groups. So that's my first key takeaway here. You're going to need to pick 2, maybe 3 groups, and those are going to be where you're going to spend your time, where you're going to try to build your authority and generate, all of this goodwill. So with that, then the next question is, how do you find the right groups? And I'm going to start with a concept known as the Dream 100. This is a concept I first heard from Russell Brunson, but he got it, I think, from a guy named Chet Holmes. The idea is you want to come up with a list of the 100 people that it would be your dream to get before their audience. In other words, these are people who already have an audience built up of your potential customers. So getting in front of their audience would be very useful to you. So if you've thought about ever starting an affiliate program, these would be like the top 100 people you would want to be your affiliates sending their traffic your way. And I'm not going to say you need to actually identify 100. Don't worry about doing that right now. But I don't want you to just put a list of 5 down and then stop there. I want you to think hard of the influencers who are likely to have a Facebook group, who you would likely want to be in front of their customers, their members, because they would have value for you. Basically, they're the kind of people who would want to get on your list, want to maybe buy from you, etc. So you need to do that and do a brain dump, because you want to have options to then think through the next steps. So again, do this task, come up with a big long list. I think the first time I did it, I probably came up with, maybe 50 or so names of people. And again, you're going to have to do some stretching to get there, to be honest with you. Some of them aren't going to be a good fit. Some of them are, but you need to figure this out. And so again, I want you to understand this shouldn't necessarily be people who you necessarily want to be learning from. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. The important thing is that these are people who are teaching and reaching your customers. So you need to think about it that way. And again, it's going to be tough if they're like a direct competitor, right? I mean, if you sell Facebook advertising, you can't really go into another Facebook advertisers group and really expect to make much progress. So it can't be a direct competitor. It has to be someone who is complementary to what you do. They serve the same people, but you wouldn't be competing with them if you were in their group. Now, from there, I want to give you some of the things you're going to want to look for in the groups. Number 1, you're going to want the group to have a critical mass. I think 1,000 or more is probably a good place to be, but at the same time, you don't want it to be 50,000, because if it's 50,000, you will just get lost in the wash. You're never going to get the critical mass you're going to need to really deploy this. I've employed the strategy in groups as small as 850 and then up to a few thousand. I think it's 5,000 or 7,000 in one of the groups. And so that's kind of the sweet spot. I would say more than 1,000, less than 10,000 is going to be where you want to be. And now here's a tricky point. You want these to be paid groups, not free groups. And by paid groups, it could be they pay to be in the group, but more likely it's the group that comes when you buy someone's product. And this is tricky because it means you're going to actually have to buy from these people to, buy their products to be in these groups. And you might say, ooh, I don't want to do that. And I can get why you have that reluctance, but let me explain to you why you want these groups. Number 1, the other people in these groups are buyers, not just thinkers. Ultimately, whatever you do in business, you have to reach people who are willing to pull out their wallet and pay for your product. The best way to qualify people is if you're in groups and talking to people that you know have already bought complementary products. If they've already bought these other things, that might be a good sign for you that they are people who, number one, can afford and are likely to be willing to pay for your products down the line. Also, I would tell you candidly, I have found that the groups for these paid products, kind of the Facebook group that goes with a course or some other membership or something like that, tend to have more quality engagements. Now, I like to say my community has good engagement, meaning, it's quality, it's people actually helping, etc. But what I'll tell you is that in other groups, I have consistently found that the paid group that someone has will have better, more quality engagements, and connections are built between people in a more, realistic way. Because here's another part of it. People tend to stick around in these paid groups, meaning a lot of free groups, someone will be in there for a month, maybe two, and then they're gone. And maybe they're still a member, but they don't ever check it. They don't ever see anything. So you're not going to have kind of the time to build up a connection with people. Whereas the groups that accompany paid products, either, number one, it is a very, it's a very engaged period. So people are in there every single day. Or it's a group where they are in it for a year or multiple years. So they will be engaged and actually see a lot of what happens in there. So that's another reason why the paid groups are better. And again, when I say paid groups, I mean groups that accompany paid products. Now, here's another counterintuitive point. You want to be in groups that are pretty strictly non-promotional. And what I mean by that is I've been in multiple groups where there's one or more posts a week that encourage people to either post a link to a freebie where people can sign up on an opt-in, or, lay out what their offer is, or show off what they're doing. And I'll just tell you, I've never had much success with those. I think the reason why is because pretty much the only people actually posting in response to that are people who want to promote their stuff, not people who are really looking to find other, what others may have. So to me, those are not the way to go. And you wouldn't want to be in, I don't think, in a group where literally you can promote all the time, because then it just becomes spammy and promotional. So you actually want a group that is non-promotional. And that may seem weird to you, but when I explain what you're going to do, it'll make sense. Because I'm not going to tell you to go in and promote your stuff. I'm going to tell you to do quite the opposite. And so I think that is an important factor to consider. Now, here's kind of a bonus factor. As you're going through the list and whittling it down, I would say you should also want the person whose group it is to be someone you would actually like to connect with in the long term. The way I think of it is, hey, is it someone who I would like to have them on my podcast? Or if they have a podcast, hey, is it someone whose podcast I would like to be on? And the second one, the answer is almost always going to be yes, right? Because if they're talking to my customer, I would like them to be there. But at the same time, I would like it to be someone that I would naturally want to engage with, connect with, etc. And I'm not talking about the people in it. I'm talking about the person whose group it is. And the reason why is because if you actually deploy the strategy I'm going to teach you, you will probably in the long term end up connecting with these people. And as a result, you might as well find a group where you're like, hey, that's something I'd like to do. So that's the way to think about it. Now, I'm going to put what I've just talked to you in very concrete terms by telling you what I did. Using these two parts, I chose Amy Porterfield's groups. And I want you to hear that. I chose Amy Porterfield's groups. I didn't choose any other influencer. One influencer, and initially I was very active in 2 of her groups. Now it's 3 because there's one that she's added, but that's it. The idea was this was true focused intensity. I mean, I'm putting all of my efforts into this one basic person's groups, and there's overlap between the groups. So doing, something in one group, people see me in the multiple different groups. And so they kind of get to know me. Now, to give you a sense of kind of what this has happened and kind of how this has worked for me, I've been in Amy's groups. I think I first got into it, I don't know, probably September or October of 2017 when I first signed up for, she had a list builders course. Initially, it was a list building group, but then she combined that with some others. But so I was in that group, but candidly, I didn't start originally. I started in February of 2018 when she had a pop-up group for people thinking about taking B School through Marie Forleo with her. And I was very active there. And then that became, I joined B School. And so there was a group of the other people who had joined B School through Amy. It was like, I think 850 or 900 people in that group. And I had focused intensity in there. And then I also applied it in her group, which is now called the Insiders Club, which was the group for her paying students in her programs, her courses. And so I focused entirely on there. And by deploying and kind of going through the strategies that I'm going to talk about in a second, I landed myself on her podcast, got her on my podcast, have become her go-to legal guy that she literally tells people, people ask legal questions, she says, go to Bobby. If people need a DIY template, she says, go to Bobby. And I'm now an official ambassador in one of her new programs. And on top of all that, I have connected with so many of her students. When I talk about all those people who are coming to me, almost all of them are from Amy's program. In fact, as you're sitting there listening to this, there's a pretty good chance that you found me through Amy's World, or maybe indirectly because someone in Amy's World sent you my way. And it's not 100%, but it's a pretty good chance that my efforts in those three groups have ultimately gotten you into my world. That's the power of what I'm talking about. And so again, I could go through Amy's, all the reasons why I chose her groups. I mean, she was one of kind of an obvious choice. She serves the same people I do. She has really good people that follow her. She has the same kind of heart that I do and the same kind of approach that I do to kind of serving people, et cetera. So there were a lot of, matches. And I have to be honest, when I first started, I had no plan to be on her podcast or anything like that. Or, that wasn't what I had in mind. And I didn't realize that by doing what I was going to do, I could actually build the connection that I have with her directly. I was doing it to build connection with the other people in the groups, to serve, et cetera. And, I discovered the power of this tactic or this strategy. So that's kind of giving you a sense of how many groups and how to pick them. Now let's talk about what you do when you're in the groups. Actually, let me start by telling you what you're not going to do. You're not going to ever spam people. You're never going to post something with a link to one of your freebies on its own. You're never going to have a post that is promoting yourself. You're never going to have a post that talks about how wonderful you are. You're never going to post an affiliate link in a group, ever, period, full stop. And again, I would almost say if a group would allow you to post an affiliate link, that is not the right group. And in fact, you're going to be careful even about giving a link when someone asks you for a link. Meaning, even if someone says, hey, I want to get on your newsletter, how do I do it? You're going to be very careful. You're going to be very respectful. You're going to be very mindful of that. And, in that case, what I've done is I asked when it was happening and I wanted to make sure that it was okay. Hey, if someone asked me, is it okay? And so that's the approach you should take. So with those things of what you're not going to do, I want to talk about what you are going to do. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to spend time in the group and you're going to look for questions that are in your wheelhouse. And when there's a question that's in your wheelhouse, your specialty with what your service is, with whatever your product offering is, you're going to hit it out of the park. And by hit it out of the park, I mean, you're going to provide a very meaningful answer, a very meaningful response, a meaty response that gives people a ton of value. You want people in the group to know you as the person in the group for your topic. In my case, I want to be the legal guy. Whatever you do, if you're a Facebook ads person, you want to be the Facebook ads person that when a question about Facebook ads comes up, people will get to say, that's what so-and-so knows, and, post your name and tag you and get you on that. So ideally, when you first start doing this, you're going to have to be looking for it. You're going to have to be finding the stuff to answer these questions. But what you're going to want to happen is over time, as you build up the authority in the group, other people in the group are going to know what you do, are going to see a question that's in your wheelhouse, and they're going to tag you in a response, and they're going to say, this is what Bobby does, or, hey, Bobby, this is one for you. And then you're going to get a notification and you're going to go answer it. So that's kind of the first most important part. You have to be there answering the questions that are in your wheelhouse and answering them and providing value so that people know you will be there to provide that value. Now, part of this, I want to tell you, don't take conversations to direct messages or make them private. Now, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, when you do that, that's a message to people that says, I'm going to try to sell you something, and they're not going to want to do it. But more importantly, the power in the strategy is in being there for everyone to see all the time. That means you have to be posting an answer to, person 1 that persons 2 through 500 also see and get to start thinking of you and seeing you providing the value and associating you with that topic so that you become top of mind. And so you've got to actually be posting it publicly. But it also, I want to be clear, the power comes from delivering incredible value to the group and from being giving. And that's why you have to have a mindset that you're actually going to give and answer questions that theoretically could let them maybe do what they need to do without hiring you, buying from you, etc. Literally just the other day, I was answering a question. Someone was asking about a contract. Do I need a contract for X, Y, and Z? I said, yes. I said, look, I love legalese, but here are the key things you need to talk about in that agreement. And if nothing else, at least write one yourself. And so I literally gave this person a template of the different things to consider and to include, etc., because that's what you have to do. You have to have that reputation as a giver. And when you do that, when people see that publicly all the time, that's going to start cementing that you're a good person. They're going to know, like, and trust you. So it's all about that cycle of doing it. And that means being public. Don't go to DM. Now, another thing you might consider doing, if it's allowed and if it's appropriate, is to post a link to your freebie in the group. Now, mind you, remember, I didn't say post a link to your opt-in. I said the actual freebie. I did this in Amy's group last year. I gave people a freebie that walked through website legal stuff. And they didn't have to opt in. They didn't have to do anything. I took the approach that the universe would pay me back, that karma, that whatever you wanted to call it, doing that and giving would pay off in spades. And so that is something I would encourage you to strongly consider, especially if you have multiple freebies, right? So you can give them one and just say, here you go, free. Don't even, don't have to opt in or anything. And if you build this reputation, they're going to want to get on your list anyway. And so you'll have another way for them to do it if they reach out and say, hey, I want blah, 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 whatever it is. But you're going to just deliver the value, and giving an actual freebie away without an opt-in, that's a really strong play to do that. So that kind of in a nutshell is dealing with stuff in your wheelhouse. But here's what I'm going to tell you. You can't just deal with the stuff in your wheelhouse. I don't know what you do, but chances are that you will not have enough to contribute to if you focus exclusively on things really within your area of expertise. So you're going to have to do some other things. Number one, you need to be a cheerleader. You need to post congratulations. You need to celebrate with people when they post celebrations. You need to try to help maybe, buck people up if they're down and help them maybe see the positive. Because first, let me tell you, no one really wants to listen to the negative person, the person who is always down, et cetera. They don't like that. People are naturally drawn to you if you're an encourager, a cheerleader, a positive influence. And this actually was one of the big changes I made last year in Amy's group, and it was done, quite honestly, for, I've told the story many times. Amy's community manager created an engagement contest, and that meant I had to post a lot. And the only way I could do that, there wasn't enough legal. So I started doing these kinds of things, and it was way outside of my comfort zone. And if you're someone who you hear this and you say, but I'm not a cheerleader, that's not something I'm comfortable doing or I enjoy doing, I challenge you to try it for a month and get back to me. When I did it, it didn't even take a month. It took me a couple of weeks, and my whole life changed. Seriously, my outlook on the world changed from being positive and from doing it in these Facebook groups. So I would encourage you to give it a try. And people now can't believe that I wasn't always like that. But I say, yeah, I wasn't. But it was one of those things, I did it and it brought joy. And so I would encourage you to do the same thing. So aside from your wheelhouse and being a cheerleader and encourager, etc., when you see a post where you can add value, it's a topic that isn't necessarily in your wheelhouse. It's not something you sell any products related to, but you can add value because you've gone before that person. Answer it. Give them information. There is a ton of information in your brain. Share it with people. This is going to up your reputation in the group. People are just going to start to see you as an invaluable resource. With me, I found that in a lot of these groups, I had a lot of information, a lot of knowledge about online marketing strategies, tactics, etc., that had nothing to do with the legal stuff, but I could answer people's questions. I could provide value. And I'll tell you now, I get tagged in Amy's groups all the time related to marketing, not having anything to do with the legal stuff. Because people have kind of figured out that I kind of know a lot of this different stuff and I can provide value. And so they do it. And I think they know that maybe if I don't know, I probably would know someone in the group who would know it and I could kind of connect them. And so you want to become that person. And you become that person by answering lots of questions. So just find things you can answer and answer them. Now, at the end of the day, what you want is to become someone who pretty much everybody who's in the group knows you. And I don't mean they know you personally. Maybe they feel like they do, but they know your name. And so, or pretty quickly after joining the group, they know your name and they see you all the time. And so they start to associate you as the person, kind of the go-to person. That's what you want. I mean, essentially what you want is in whatever group or groups you choose, you want to be among the, handful of people. There's probably 5 people in most groups that I've been in my experience who are there so much that basically other than whoever's group it is and whoever is the moderator on behalf of the group, there's a group of say 5 or so people that everybody else seems to know because they're there all the time. You want to be in that group of 5. That's where you want to get. And so when I say that, you're probably going to start to realize now you get why I say you can't do this in 10 groups. This is a serious time investment. You're going to have to probably, when you don't have something that's taking a ton of your time, you're going to have to try to spend time in the group or groups every single day. Now, it doesn't mean you have to spend an hour in it every day. I mean, maybe you spend, 10 or 15 minutes in it today, but every single day you're going to have to make a point to go in the group, see if there are questions and answer them. And especially early on when you're trying to establish yourself. Once you've built that up, again, luckily you'll get the reputation. And when people have a question that is in your wheelhouse, they'll tag you. And so you'll be able to find those quickly. I candidly spend an hour or more a day during the week and most weekend days, but not always, in the groups that I'm focused on. And again, because it's all one person's group, I don't feel the need to be an hour in each. I mean, I spend about an hour probably total. I schedule it into my day. It is an intentional part of my day. And then there are other times when, maybe I'm sitting around and I'm watching TV at night and a commercial comes up. I pull up my phone and just look and scroll and see if there's something to address. And what I'll tell you is I don't do this when I'm kind of being intentional about kind of a time blocking or focus blocked time, But other times when I'm not working on my big tasks, I will have a Facebook tab opened in the group, and I'll refresh it every once in a while and just scroll it, just see, is there something I should address? I want people to say, you are always here. And they do. That's what has happened. People have the impression that I am in these groups 24/7 all day, every day, because I am there quite a bit. And again, that's what the mindset you have to take. You're not going to be there 24/7, but you have to be there enough that it's that important. So again, for this strategy to really work, you have to decide that being known in this Facebook group is close to your A1 sauce, as Dave Ramsey says, your top priority. Now, it's not going to be higher than your big rocks, as that, if you know that phrase of like the big goals you need to be working on in your business, but it is going to be one of the most important ongoing activities in your business if you're going to want to deploy this strategy. Because you have to commit to it. You have to commit that you're going to be there. And this isn't something you can outsource. I mean, I guess theoretically, maybe you could try to, but that would be wrong. I mean, people have connected with me because it's me and because they know it's me. And so that's the kind of commitment you're going to have for this to work. So if that's not a commitment you want to make, if you don't want this to be it, don't do it. I mean, there are other ways you could use similar strategies on Instagram with, connecting, commenting, liking, etc., and replying to other people's comments, doing kind of a similar thing, but not in groups, but on Instagram. You could do that. But whatever you choose, at the end of the day, for social media to be effective, you have to be engaging. And engagement takes time. Engagement isn't something you can automate. Engagement isn't something that's just going to happen without effort. You have to commit to it and consider it an important part of your business. And, another thing I'm going to tell you is what this means, quite honestly, is for me, when I'm on Facebook these days, I'm pretty much not ever really meandering around. I'm rarely on my news feed. I'm either in one of my groups, answering questions, engaging, etc., or I'm in one of the groups that I've targeted. And that's where I spend my time on Facebook. And I don't meander. I'm there with a purpose. I'm looking for questions. I'm looking to add value. I'm looking to answer questions. I'm looking to help and to serve. And that's the attitude you've got to bring to it. If you bring that attitude, it'll work. So that's kind of how you're going to have to do it in a nutshell. And I want to talk to you about the results. What can you expect, right? I mean, I can't give you some scientific, systematic answer. I've never done studies on this. What I'll tell you is it's not an immediate tactic. It's more like SEO than it is like Facebook ads, right? It's going to take some time to build your reputation, your credibility in these groups. After a while of being very intentional about it, and again, especially in the beginning, making a focused effort to make sure you find every question, every post that's in your wheelhouse and provide some value there, and then providing other value, etc. After a while, you'll get known. People will start tagging you. People will start, not even the people have questions. People will see a question, and, if they're in the group all the time, they'll know, hey, you're the person to answer this question, so they'll tag you. And then after a while, you will start to get a steady stream of people contacting you, whether it's going to your Facebook page, going to your Facebook bio, going to your business page, whatever it is, they're going to start finding you. They're going to start getting on your list. They're going to start buying from you. That's the power of this. Like I said, pretty much every day, I can find at least one person who's joining my list or who is buying from me or who is contacting me about something else because they found me through these groups. And it's free. I mean, it's time. You don't have to put in any money in it. It's purely, I say that you have to buy the products, but hopefully these are products you would want to have anyway. And then it's just putting in the time. And once you put in the time, it is like SEO. It continues to build and you will continue to get good things from it. And again, as I said, one of the added benefits and added bonuses, if you do it right, the person whose group it is going to take notice. They may reach out to you. They may want to do some kind of, a training with you or have you on their podcast or maybe something else. And that is the icing on the cake that takes what is already a good tactic that's going to do some serious good for you and make it even better. So that's what I would tell you. That's the strategy in a nutshell. That's my Facebook group strategy. That's what I've deployed. That's kind of me lifting up the curtain. I have to be honest with you. I wasn't being this intentional about it at the beginning, but after a while, you start to become intentional about it. And now it's just part of my day and I enjoy doing it. The people in these groups, even though, they're, I don't know, 9,000, maybe 10,000 between the groups I'm in, I feel like a lot of them are my friends. And even though I've never met them in person, some of them I've never talked to on the phone, Zoom, anything. It's literally just been through Facebook. But if I get to meet them in real life, it will feel like meeting my old friends. And it's also where, some of these people have, that are, I consider my confidants that I can talk to and bounce ideas off of, have come from that same group. So it is a powerful strategy. If you are thinking about how am I going to use social media to build a following, and you're willing to play the long game, I would tell you, I think this, at least right now, is probably the most powerful thing you could be doing. And that's why I do it, and I continue to do it, and that's where I continue to focus my efforts. And until something changes, it's where I will continue to focus my efforts. So I hope you found this useful. I know most people aren't going to do it. Most people won't be willing to put in the time because it takes a lot of time. But if you're someone who really wants to, let's say your list is at 0 or near 0 and you want to build it and you don't have a huge ads budget, I'm going to tell you this is probably the best approach you could take. If you have any questions, again, you can join me in my group by going to youronlinegenius.com/community. That's where I spend my time online other than in the groups I'm targeting and trying to, provide value in. So I would love to see you there. If you have questions, we can talk about them there. If you want to talk about this topic, I would love to talk about it. I'm passionate about it. So that's it for this week's episode. I'll see you back here next week for another episode of the Online Genius Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Online Genius Podcast. Make sure to tune in next week for more great tips, tricks, and strategies to help you build and protect your online genius.